So I'm Karin Goldmark, and I am now here in my role as one of the founders of an organization called GreenLink Education. And I'm here to talk about saving time, money, and not the planet, the climate action learning curve. And the reason I'm not here to talk about saving the planet is that often in climate change talk, there's talk about saving the planet, but the truth is the planet will absolutely persist no matter what we do. The planet's gonna be fine. Our institutions of government, of society, may not be fine. The very school facilities we run may not be fine, but the planet will completely be fine. But I am here to talk about the climate action learning curve because it is something that I think we're all on together. Little bit of humble brag. When I first came to the K12 Facilities Forum in the fall of 2019, I was here in my role as a Deputy Chancellor in the New York City school system. And at that conference, I predicted that our work in the future would all be about health and wellness. And I thought that meant in a fun way, we did a meditation exercise, we talked about yoga, and we talked about health and wellness. And then in the spring of 2020, all of our work became about health and wellness in the worst possible way, in ways that we are probably all still working off the hangover from today. And for those who just entered, I'm talking about the pandemic, not last night, but it applies to both. And then in the fall of 21, I saw some of you in Miami, and I predicted that sustainability would be the new topic for school facilities. And then lo and behold, last spring and this summer, the federal government passed the biggest ever funding for schools at the federal level, all related to sustainability. And here we all are getting ready to talk about that. So today I'm here to make another prediction, and you don't have to believe it. I'm just saying, pretty good track record. I'm predicting that schools and school systems are going to become much more entrepreneurial. We're going to be looking at using assets to generate revenue streams. Some of you talked about that in a small group yesterday, about land, about buildings, about other kinds of assets school districts have as yet unappreciated, about going after new kinds of funding streams, and about authentically and ethically involving students in the work of transforming school facilities. And it's important that we keep in mind ethically, always with respect to students. But I don't always predict everything, so I just want to note that I would never have predicted that I would see Nicole Ruppersberg dressed like David Bowie with a star on her eye and a wig in her hair. It was fantastic. One of the most memorable K12 Facilities Forum experiences I've ever had. Definitely the most memorable. So this is the need. It can feel like a tsunami. It may even look to you like a tsunami. There's the need with respect to facilities improvements, where we heard yesterday that we have $85 billion in unfunded capital improvement needs in our school buildings across the United States. It can feel like a tsunami in terms of what some of you have told me is all the ESSER funding that's going to come your way once the academic folks say they can't spend it at the last minute. You're going to get it, and then you're going to be expected to spend it really quickly. It definitely is a need in terms of learning loss that students have experienced. The need in terms of, with respect to students so much, the social and emotional needs as we've been discussing this morning. And there's also a need with respect to making sure that our buildings are ready for our communities no matter the weather. So whether it's a flood or a storm or tornadoes, and some of you in this room have seen all three in the last year. Not looking at you, Mike. The need to make sure that our buildings are ready to serve the community no matter the weather. And then finally, there's also the need to change how we power all of our buildings, and doing that as rapidly as possible. Feels like a lot. But the nice thing about big waves is that if you know what you're doing and you're willing to take a little risk, this could be you. You could surf those waves. And while this is actually Felipe Toledo, a Brazilian champion surfer, it could be all of us surfing those big waves we just talked about. Because the climate action, or if you want to call it energy transition, or if you want to call it stewardship of the land, all of those challenges, whatever you call them, are also opportunities. So there's the challenge of the experience gap. There is no one school district in the United States that has done all of the work it needs to do to fully transition all of its buildings from how we used to power our buildings to how we're going to power our buildings, how we used to run our buildings to how we're going to run our buildings, how we used to design our buildings to how we're going to design our buildings. Nobody's done all of it, even in California where things are way ahead, even in Boston with their total ace sustainability director and well-deserved national reputation. So there's an experience gap. There's also a motivation gap, because when I say the word sustainability, people shut down. When you say the words climate action, people don't want to talk about it. But with that motivation gap, as we'll see in a minute, there are different ways to talk about the same work. And finally, there's a funding gap. We've talked about the funding gap already in terms of what we have access to as a sector and what we need as a sector to really serve students well. But let's talk about what opportunities that leaves us with, or not leaves us with, that's a little negative. What opportunity does that give us? It gives us the opportunity to learn by doing, which all the educators tell us is the very, very best way to learn. It gives us the opportunity to phone a friend. So the very person who you sang "We Are the Champions" with last night can help you figure out what you need to do next, or has probably done the project that you're thinking about undertaking. Or you may be that friend who gets phoned. With respect to motivation, my proposal is that we flip the script entirely and just focus on the benefits. It doesn't matter the politics. It doesn't matter what you think about climate change. It doesn't matter about all of that. Really, what we're talking about is an energy transition that's definitely happening across the country, and it's going to happen for all of our schools, whether it's over 5 or 50 years. And the benefits of that are lower costs, better facilities for our students, and lower emissions. Great. And we can involve students, not just because it's fun, which it is, by the way, fun. If any of you have ever had students on any of your planning teams, it makes that team so much better. I see a nodding face here. But also because the jobs that right now you don't know how to fill, we can actually, through CTE programs, match with people who right now are in high schools and middle schools, some of them, saying, you know what, I want to make a really good living. I want to be able to pay my way through college, or I want to go to some college and not all 4 years, and don't actually really know what's out there for them. So we have an employment gap, and students actually have an opportunity gap, and we can actually bridge those by involving students in the planning work and in the actual work through career and technical education programs. And finally, on the funding gap, it presents an opportunity for advocacy. We can develop models that actually can become national models. There are all kinds of things we can do, banding together in your states to advocate for net metering for schools. You don't have to advocate it for everybody. Don't tell anybody outside this room. Just advocate for it for schools, because it's a tax-neutral way to fund school districts, so legislators will love it, and you don't have to ask them to do it for every single residential building in the state. Sorry, people with residential solar, just for school buildings. And advocating at the federal level to really keep including schools in the infrastructure work, as has been happening. Okay, so now I'm introducing GreenLink Education. And when I say now, I mean literally our website went live this morning. We started this company just a couple of months ago. Founded this year by me and by my teammate, Anthony de Guzman, who some of you know and apparently think well of even. He's the former COO in DC public schools and then ran an independent school in Philadelphia for the better part of a decade. And our mission is really simple. We want to bring proven sustainability solutions to scale in the education sector. And our goal is to help you just be wildly successful in your job. So what you already have on your to-do list is what we want to help you with. We are not trying to add things to your to-do list. We're trying to help you get your to-do list done. Saving money, skipping slides and going ahead a little bit, sorry, improving service, and involving students. So It's really 3 easy steps, and you can start anywhere on the triangle. So the first or last is to make a plan. Next, you get help, and then you involve students. Or you can start by involving students. One of our partners has a bunch of green teams in their schools. They're in the Pacific Northwest. It works. And the students said, what we really want to work on is waste. There's so much food waste happening in our cafeterias. So they put together a plan and actually have asked us to help them develop their food waste sustainability plan, the composting that'll go along with that, the waste diversion. And then you get help. Some of the vendors that we've been talking about and with at this forum, some of your local providers, local community groups, because it's a team. With the end goal being your actual goal of efficient buildings, better service for students, and lowering costs. So here's a sample recipe. One district we're working with is going to use ESSER's funding for their HVAC upgrades, which we've heard about approximately 100 times this session. Then is going to put in some money of the districts on lighting. So ending up with a pretty big part of an energy retrofit for 7 or 8 buildings. And with that, we'll start a new CTE program to develop the workforce. They will work on the projects with great supervision from experienced professionals, creating a career opportunity for students in, as you know, a high-value, high-demand sector that not only is projected to grow in the school sector, but across the country in terms of HVAC work over the next 15 years. We're also helping bring in a solar developer to bring in renewable energy projects on the same sites, also with apprenticeships. So all that adds up to significant energy savings and a new high-value student program. And conveniently, by coincidence perhaps, also meets all of the requirements for that USDOE as an energy grant that we heard about yesterday. So I'll let you figure out whether that was a coincidence or not, but that's just one sample, which, by the way, you are free to just use. And as you think about your next moves there. Another example is a learning loss recovery program we're developing with a district that has an outdoor education facility already. We went to students and said, would you like to have a semester-long education and environmental leadership program at the center? Because students say they love going to the center, but there's really no programming for the high school students. And the high school students said, no, I do not want to miss my second term senior year and spend it in the woods. I want to be at my school, at the parties, and at the prom. But the students said, you know what I need? I need to make up an algebra credit because during the pandemic, when I was in the 9th grade, I failed algebra. And I need it to graduate. So given that input, we went and developed an intensive algebra tutoring model for 2 weekends where students come out, they get intensive tutoring, they do intensive algebra work and also the outdoor education work. And then we engaged in what is gently on this slide called strategic marketing to staff. We went to the coaches and we said, do you have students who you would like to be academically eligible? And they said, oh, yes, I do. And we said, well, can you help us recruit students for this weekend? And now everybody wants to go the weekend, shockingly. That's the algebra intensive weekend. It addresses learning loss. It is an eligible expenditure for that category of the funding. And more importantly, it provides a way for young people to actually connect with a subject matter that's really important and that's standing in the way of their graduation, and to connect with nature, and to connect with each other. So all of what we heard this morning from Ms. Walker about the pro-social opportunities are in this weekend. They work together on problems. The problems get harder, and they keep working together, and they go as a team. So I know most of us here work on facilities, but sometimes it's what you do with the facilities, and we're helping there. So we work on a range of projects, and I won't even go through all of these. If it has anything to do with sustainability, we're interested in talking with you about it and helping you figure out what your priorities are. And for vendors in the room, we want to connect with you too, because in the end, you do the work, right? We need to know about your products, so when our clients say to us, this is what we're doing, for example, One of our clients is building 4 new schools, and I learned yesterday from one of the presenters here about all of what they can do around kitchen efficiency that's not necessarily actually happening. Or I've learned about linseed-based flooring. Actually, I learned that last time. But there are all kinds of product performance contracts, all kinds of products that we need to know about. So if we haven't met yet, feel free to come up to me in the hallway and just make sure we meet so that I know what you're up to and what you provide districts. And then there's the comprehensive sustainability planning. So instead of doing one-offs, coming up with a whole plan, just like Littleton does with their 50-year capital plan, coming up with a plan so the districts are working the plan year after year after year so that they know what they're going to get to when they can get to it, whether or not that's this year or another year. All right, well, thank you so much. We'll pass it on.